Welcome to my World History Notes, where I discuss the book that I wrote to teach homeschoolers world history. A Bible believer looks at world history. You can purchase it on lulu.com, amazon.com, or at the Bible Baptist bookstore, or just follow me here. Um, so now I'm going to begin today. By God's command, Pharaohnecho set out to go into battle against the king of Assyria, who was at war with him at the time and was planning to besiege Carchemish on the Euphrates River. Josephus stated that he went to fight against the Medes and the Babylonians, who had overthrown the Assyrian-controlled empire in his work, Antiquities of the Jews. Carchemish, at the time of Sennacherib, belonged to and was occupied by the Assyrians, according to Isaiah 10:9. However, when the Assyrian hegemony was destroyed, it returned into the hands of the Babylonians. Just as the time when the king of Persia had defeated Babylon and Assyria in Ezra 6:22, he was called the king of the Assyrians. In addition, as I've said before, the secular authors also state that Babylon and Assyria were south and north of essentially the same culture and civilization, while the Bible even states that the kingdom of the Chaldeans, the tribe that became associated with Babylon and its science and religion, was founded by the king of Assyria in Isaiah 23:13. In God's judgment of Israel and Judah, think of Assyria, Babylon as the hammer, Jeremiah 50:23, and Egypt as the anvil, between which they are smashed under God's direction. And when Josiah foolishly entered into this war, he was killed. This took place in the valley of Megiddo, which belonged to the tribe of Manasseh, Joshua 17:11. Herodotus said that Necho attacked the Syrians with an army and overthrew them in Magdolis. After the battle, he took a large city of Syria called Catitus. The Huguenot historian, a Huguenot was the French Protestant much murdered and persecuted by the Roman Church, Joseph Scaliger, noted that Caditus was actually Kadesh, which is mentioned in Numbers 20:16. Scaliger also mentioned that Magdalus and Megiddo were located near each other. Because Magdalus was the more famous place, secular historians said the battle took place there. In the same way, it is understood that the battle between Alexander and Darius at Gargamella is said to have been fought at Arbela, since the former place was unheard of. It is even more likely that Magdalus and Megiddo are the same place, since that is the place where Mary Magdalene derived her surname. In Matthew, the name is given as Magdala, Matthew 15:39. The Syrian renders it Megiddo, and the Old Latin translated as Megiddon, which is similar to Megiddo. Josiah's death may have delayed the Babylonian captivity, 2 Kings 22:20. When Necho returned from Assyria, he deposed Josiah's successor and placed his own choice on the throne. These are the days of the work of the prophets Jeremiah and Habakkuk. Jeremiah foretells the rise and conquest of Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, and then prophesies the downfall of Babylon. Today, Arabs that live near Babylon have insisted to American soldiers, or when we were occupying Iraq, that the ruins were haunted by demons. Nebuchadnezzar is the viceroy of Babylon by 607 BC, and until his father Nabopolassar dies, and as Jeremiah predicts, he defeats the Egyptians at the Euphrates, cutting off Necho's forces at Carchemish, Jeremiah 46:2. He also takes Tyre and Phoenicia, as Ezekiel prophesies in chapter 29, 17, 19. Tyre, of which Ezekiel predicts the complete annihilation of, begun by Nebuchadnezzar and finished by Alexander, was an important, if not the most important, Phoenician seaport. Tyre was an important caravan destination, depended upon by merchants from all over the ancient Near East and quite wealthy. The Holy Spirit, speaking through Ezekiel, not only predicts its downfall, but equates its king with Satan in the Garden of Eden. Tyre was located along a trade route that included Sidon, Sardis, and Carchemish, and then down the Euphrates. Durant says the coast of Phoenicia was a narrow strip of land 100 miles long and 10 miles wide between Syria and the Mediterranean Sea, being guarded by the mountains and hills from the rest of Mesopotamia. They were the busiest merchants of the ancient world and masters of the sea once they became liberated from Egypt, about the time of Exodus. They manufactured various products of glass and materials, enameled vases, weapons, ornaments, and jewelry, and had a monopoly on the purple dye so valued by royalty. Purple was the color of royalty in the ancient world. They extracted this dye from mollusks that lived in plenty along their shores. The women of Tyre were famous the ancient world over for beautifully colored needlework. Tyre was extremely wealthy and powerful, and that everyone had a stake in their continuing to supply every luxury to every city in the Middle East and around the Mediterranean. They were shrewd takers, and not content with this, enslaved thousands in Spain to mine precious metals. They were not only merchants, but pirates, and often stole the entire cargoes of their rivals and enslaved their sailors. They established garrisons around the sea that eventually became flourishing colonies: Cadiz, Carthage, Marseille, in Malta, in Sicily, Sardinia, Corsica, and even in England. They occupied Cyrus, Melos, and Rhodes. They took the arts and languages of Egypt, Crete, and the Near East and spread them in Greece, Italy, and Spain. The Tyrian, Phoenician, Mercantile Empire tied the East and West together with the common thread of greed. Tyre was built on a rock several miles off the coast. It began as a fortress, but its great harbor and its security from attack soon made it the metropolis of Phoenicia. The high-rise skyscrapers that Strabo reported as being taller than anything Rome produced existing there were later completely destroyed by Alexander, as promised in Ezekiel 26:29. At this time, the Medes, later important players in the politics of the ancient world, are at war with the Lydians, whom are thought to be the ancestors of the Etruscans, according to Michael Grant in his book, The Etruscans. Now, Necho's defeat at Babylon's hands keep him from leaving Egypt for the rest of his reign. The date of the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple by Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, is hotly argued among historians. Dates given range from 606, 607 BC to 588 BC. The date does not become important with regard to prophecy. The date does become important with regard to prophecy, but not for purposes of what I'm talking about. Quote, Jeremiah 51:7. Babylon hath been a golden cup in the Lord's hand that made all the earth drunken. The nations have drunken of her wine. Therefore, the nations are mad. We'll stop there today. I hope you'll dig into this and study and look up things and come to your own conclusions. Thank you for watching.